For 2 seconds, the shadow,
Hi
Danny,
there,
looked
and
like you
welcome
had
to
a
the
cat
Danny
in your
Steve Show,
lap. I was
where
like,
we
that's
talk
cool.
about issues related to
Okay, I can't see
accessibility,
Danny still.
education, and other tips that you might
Oh,
find
no?
useful.
He's
Thanks for
there.
tuning in.
Okay.
Here's
Well,
your
yeah, I
host,
hear him. I just
Danny
don't see him.
Steves.
I see you and Eric. So, whatever.
Hi, everyone, and welcome
Hi.
to the Danny Steve Show. Tonight is a very special edition of the show because for the first time ever, I have three guests with me tonight. I think you recognize two of them. Lacey, look, Lacey Buchanan is back, um, joining us tonight, and so is Nicole, Marquez. So, um, welcome back, ladies.
Thanks.
And we have a newcomer tonight, so I would like to welcome Eric Goll to the Danny Steve Show. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
Um, so really, what tonight is all about is to get your feedback on a number of issues, and you're welcome to jump right in with your own issues. So, but one of the issues I think is that is really worth highlighting is inclusive education um, uh, for people with disabilities, because Eric, you have a sister with uh, a disability, and Lacey, you have a son. So what are your views on inclusive education?
The floor is you guys.
Lacey, I'll let you speak first because I don't have a kid, so.
Oh no. Wait, Lacey, we can't hear you. Can you guys hear?
No.
No.
Hold on.
Oh,
No?
wait, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, I had headphones plugged in, and I figured that did it. I thought it might make it quieter on my end, but we'll just have to go with it.
Hey.
Okay. So yeah, inclusive education. So education is important to me. I'm a first generation college student in my family, and I went on past college to get a Juris Doctorate because it was just so important to me to have that education background. And so, of course, I want that much for my kids and more. I want them to have the highest quality education that they can receive. And I want them to go as far as they, need to go to reach whatever success they, what their definition of success in life. And already my oldest son just finished kindergarten, and already I have seen the gap, and the gap is on one end are the things my son needs to have that high quality successful education, and on the other end are the things that our school system is actually able to provide, or sometimes even the gap is where what they know how to provide. We live in a very rural area. We live in a poor area. And so if you don't have the money to provide the super expensive equipment that comes with having special needs kids, there's a challenge there. And it doesn't really have anything to do with malice or that the school system doesn't want to provide it. It's just that they have a budget that they have to follow and maintain. And the money's, you can't spend money without having the money. And so my son's visual impairment is his biggest issue, and he needs so many things to be able to access his education the way his peers would. And there are so many things that he's just not able to get just yet through our school system. And so we did go through our local blind school last year, and we were driving 2 hours each way to get him there because our local school system, the gap was there. And although they would have filled that gap if they could have, they just weren't physically capable of doing it. And so we were driving 2 hours each way to get him to the local blind school. And it was just too much. We did it for 1 year, and it was too much, along with other issues that go along with having a disability and having my son at school. He's got a feeding tube, and not everybody knows how to use a feeding tube. And so somebody has to be at the school who can use the feeding tube, or he can't be there because he has to eat. And so, we just run into issues like that. And so this year we've decided to homeschool. And we're only about a month in. So far it's going well, so I can't speak much on it yet, though. But there's just this huge gap, and I hear it all the time from, friends and family who are kind of going through the same thing. And it seems like it goes K through 12. There's always going to be a gap, I feel like, between what our kids need and what we're actually able to provide for them education-wise.
Lacey, how do you switch gears between mother and teacher? Can you share that?
Yeah, well, so the short answer is I don't. I play both roles at the same time. So, as their mom, I feel like I am their, the most basic teacher that they have before a child goes to kindergarten. Their parents are the ones teaching sort of everything. And so I just took on the role of picking out curriculums and deciding what we would be studying and focusing on and how we were going to do it, and take on the role of sort of figuring out how to get the resources. I just sort of picked up some extra things to do that usually a school system would be doing. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm still playing mom at the same time. We're eating breakfast and we're learning about the planet all at the same time. So. It's actually, I really enjoy it because I get to see them progressing, and I get to know that I'm the one who sort of instilled that in them when they're able to, recall the things that we're learning, and they're able to, just for instance, something huge for Christian, he's learned how to raise his hands to get attention so that when he's called on in class, he can speak. And that wasn't something that he understood because that's a visual thing. Kids learn to raise their hand by seeing other kids raising their hand, and they kind of understand the concept that way. But Christian has finally figured that out because I've worked with him and we went over it and over, and to see him make these gains, it's extra rewarding for me knowing I'm the one who got to teach him that.
How did you teach him that? I mean,
well,
yeah.
Everything for Christian, nothing is visual, so everything has to be hands-on and auditory. So I have to repeat myself over and over and over to tell him, something you might be able to tell another 6-year-old once or twice, you might have to tell him 5 or 6 times because he's totally lacking the visual cues that we get. So I take his hand and I raise it for him, and I explain what we're doing and why, and then we practice it over and over and over until he gets it. And sometimes he can get it in a couple tries, and sometimes, the harder concepts, it takes a while.
And is Chandler going through the same courses as Kristen is, or is he at a different level?
Well, they're pretty close to the same developmental level, so I'm able to teach them mostly the same things. And I just have to sort of adapt Christian stuff. Chandler's not learning Braille. That is one thing Christian's doing specifically for Christian. But at the same time, while Christian's learning Braille, I am teaching Chandler, English prints. So it's sort of just, the same thing. They're both learning to read. Just they're doing it in the ways that they need, and I'm able to customize that. But a lot of things are still, Chandler's 4. So 4-year-olds need a lot of play, and they need a lot of like hands-on activities. They're not going to sit at a desk and like do workbooks all day. So, and Christian can't do workbooks. So right now it's all very matched up as far as, when we do math, we get out things that we count, and we get out rulers that we measure with, and we get out scales that we weigh with and stuff like that. It's all very hands-on at Chandler's age anyway. So they're pretty closely matched on the kind of stuff that they're doing. So that makes it easier on me.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like I'm asking all the questions here. Do you guys want to jump in here with any questions or comments?
For Lacey?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do have a question. So, some parents, they decide to either embrace that their child has a disability, or it's something that's deep-seated and they harbored a kind of resentment. But from what you're saying, I see that you really embrace this as a mother. Have you been with any other mothers who have children with disabilities who are having a hard time embracing their child's disability in the school system?
Inside of the school system, no, because, usually the kids are just dropped off, and, I've never made a lot of connections inside of the school system with other families, but like outside of the school system in the community, I have a lot of, I call it like my people. We're special needs moms. We're, friends because we share that similarity. And, I think we're all at different levels on what you're talking about as far as, the acceptance stage of the disability kind of thing. And, and I feel like sometimes it's day by.
I was going to say, keep talking. Battery's running low. I'm just going to plug it in, but keep talking.
Oh, yeah. Mine is kind of starting to, too. I probably need to plug in.
Please keep talking.
Yeah, so, and I feel like sometimes it's a day by day. It depends on the day, for every mom at least. Some days it's easy to embrace and there's a lot of joy, and some days are just harder. And, it's a little bit harder to accept things on days like that, and so I try not to think too much on it, or I guess judge really like where another mother is at in that process, because I remember a time when I was going through sort of a grieving process with Christian, and it wasn't I wasn't where I am now. It was more some bitterness and some resentment about sort of like why us, why my child, that kind of stuff, and and I had to choose, did I want to like stay there, or did I want to move forward, because I couldn't change, the disability. That wasn't an option. So I could stay bitter, or I could just move forward and try to, do the best I could with what I had. And I decided I didn't want to live bitter, and I decided that wasn't going to be good for Christian either, because I want him to accept who he is. And how's he ever going to do that if I can't even accept it? So yeah, I've noticed other moms, with things that reminded me of when I was there, in that bitterness, sort of, when they'll say things like, oh, I remember those days, but I don't ever really say anything about it because I'm not sure how to approach it. And it's not something that we talk about. We don't talk about, there's this big taboo about, like, a lot of people say, oh, I wouldn't change my child for the world. If I could give my son vision, I would, because it makes his life harder. If I could do something to give him sight, if there was a surgery that would give him sight, we would do it. Now, it's not because I don't love who he is.
Yeah.
It's just because he has an extra challenge to overcome, and I don't want to see my child, struggle. And he does have to struggle, and he does have to work harder than other people to do the same things, just because he doesn't have his vision. And so I think moms feel this pressure that they have to pretend that they would never change their child no matter what. And I don't, because then they think, well, I don't love my child for who he is. And that's not it. It's just, as a mom, if it was Chandler with something that he was suffering with, I would do whatever I could to take it away. That's, that's kind of my protective instinct taking over.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I I
Thanks.
I know a story of tracking Lacey, but the others don't know. So can you give them a short synopsis of what Christian's disability is?
Yes. So Christian had amniotic band syndrome in the womb, which was fibrous bands that attached to his face and caused it to cleft from the corners of his mouth up into his eyes. And so he's had surgery to close parts of his face already. And so that's why it looks like just his eyes are affected, but it's really his whole mouth, his nasal cavity, his eyes, all that was clefted. It's a really rare form of cleft and like less than and so he has to have reconstructive surgeries, which they take time, they're a process, and you have to sort of plan them and stage them. And so he's still in the process of having, those surgeries. But there's no people say, oh, why don't you do an eye transplant? Well, eye transplants don't exist. They're just not a thing yet. But so, and then people say, well, why not a prosthetic? Well, because we've been told by every surgeon we've ever seen that his orbits won't hold a prosthetic, and just to attempt it would be a couple dozen surgeries. And we don't feel like the benefit that way the risks for something like that. And I tell people, I'm like, he'll never see his prosthetic, so it's really for you. So I'm not making him have surgery, not for other people,
Right, yeah.
So,
yeah. And Lacey has written a book if you want to learn more about it. It's called Through the Eyes of Hope, and it's an amazing book. I have actually read it, and it's amazing. So,
thank you.
Yeah. So, if you want to learn more about that, that's the book.
Where can we pick up the book, Lacey?
Yeah.
Online is easiest. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million online, all those good places.
Okay.
So
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Eric, it's your turn to be in the hot seat.
I'm on the hot seat, yeah?
And
Yeah.
share your story of Sarah and what you are doing today, and yeah.
Sure, yeah. Well, first off, just want to thank Lacey for being vulnerable and sharing a lot about herself and her family. And I think one of the things that came out for me is every person, every family their situation is unique, and everybody has a unique set of choices in front of them, including when it comes to education, right? So for one person, it might be best to homeschool. For another person, it might be best, to be in a public school or a private school or whatever, right? So I think that's something that stood out for me when you're talking about your story, Lacey. For me and my story, I have an older sister, Sarah, who has a developmental disability. So she's 3 years older than I am. And I won't go into the whole story because it'll take too long. But essentially, I'm pretty involved in my sister's life, helping her to plan her life forward. And about 3 years ago, she lives with my parents still. And the situation is pretty bad at home. And essentially, I was getting phone calls all the time from my family. And my mom called me one day and basically said, I can't do it anymore. I can't, take care of Sarah. She needs to go somewhere else, live somewhere else. And so I ended up moving home for 4 months to help my parents kind of figure out what was going on and help my sister. And what was at the bottom of it is my mom and I guess my parents were treating my sister like she was 12, and like a 12-year-old little girl, right? Like they're a little girl. And my sister just wanted to be treated like a 30-year-old woman and make her own decisions and hang out with people she wanted to hang out with, do what she wanted to do during the day, and go down to the smallest details of picking out her own clothes in the morning, right? So it was just helping everybody understand that, and then helping people plan, or my parents and my sister create their own vision for what their life wanted to look like. So just a little kind of further along the evolution of family life compared to Lacey's story. But when it refers to education, so my sister was in a segregated class since grade, I want to say high school, grade 9. Before that, she was probably kind of in and out of ordinary classrooms, but definitely grade 9 and later in I guess what would have been called a special needs classroom. And so I guess my overall thoughts on that, or things to think about, is in terms of education and a segregated, or Dan, you talked about inclusive education. When we have a segregated classroom, I think we can send the wrong message to everybody else, all the other kids, because when people with a disability are, when somebody without a disability looks at somebody with a disability, they see that they're different. And as humans, we judge each other. And when we see somebody that's different, we become scared, right? When we see people that look like us or that we have similarities with, we bond with them really quickly. If we see somebody that's different, we get scared, right? I mean, you can see that with, even if we talk about the situation in the U.S. with, Trump and, all the hate that's going on between different groups, right? We're scared of differences, and there's that fear. But the same thing applies to disability, right? We're scared of that. So when we have a segregated classroom, it promotes that fear, right? So we're teaching kids at a young age that these people are different, and they're in this different classroom because of their differences. So I mean, at a high level, and I understand that there might be some challenges and lots of things to figure out with this, supports and whatnot, but if you can do it, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is to have people with disabilities in regular classrooms. Even if they feel, maybe they're not at the same learning level or capability yet, but to give them the opportunity to get there and to promote an inclusive environment from a young age. And that's going to drive societal change and societal acceptance, because when you teach kids at a young age, then they have that for the rest of their lives. The other big benefit that I see is we're the product of the 5 closest people that we have in our lives, or the 5 people that we spend most time with. So if we're in a segregated classroom and we're spending all of our time with 5 people that are, at a lower capability level right now, compared to spending our time in an ordinary classroom where people might be at a higher learning capability, they can help pull you up, and help you expand and help you gain capability, rather than being in a classroom where you're at the same level or lower levels, so I think there's kind of those two benefits. So I just wanted to share those.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think that I think one of the reasons that segregation happens is because I know having Christian in an inclusive classroom might slow the other kids down because he can't learn at their pace. And so a lot of times that's sort of a holdup. But, in my opinion, it's real world application. Like, what are we teaching these kids? That they need to pass by and rush quickly by these people who are lesser? or that maybe life's not all about the test scores or the money, and that life is about people, and they are valuable, and that it's okay to slow down a little bit so that everybody's, sort of along the same path, and not, stuck off in another room somewhere, sort of thing. But I feel like here in the U.S. anyway, test scores drive everything. And Christian's never going to get the test scores that his peers with vision are going to get, because we simply can't. And that's, so I've kind of let go of the test score thing. They're not everything. And being in a classroom with kids who have disabilities, that's real world application, because these kids are going to grow up and be out in the world with people who have disabilities. They just are. And I think that they need to be started off young, learning how to interact and engage them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you bring up an important question. What's more important, a test score or learning how to be compassionate, learning how to be accepting, learning how to be respectful, learning how to slow down?
Yep.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, Eric, do you want to share what you've been doing over the last few months on your podcast, and
Yeah.
why that came about?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share that, Danny. So I host a podcast called Empowering Ability. It's available on kind of any major podcast app that you might use, or you can check it out at empoweringability.org. But yeah, so the podcast is all about empowering families, individuals, and supporters to live full, inclusive, ordinary, incredible lives in society. And so every week I interview a guest. So it could be sharing the success story of an individual or family that has a son or daughter with a disability, or it could be a sibling, or it could be somebody that has a lot of experience in the disability field. Interviewed quite a few authors and researchers as well. So it's a resource available out there to families, and really focused on the concept of empowering people to have choice and control over their lives. And for me, where that came about is really just rooted in my family experience with my sister. So through helping my sister plan and start to implement things that she wants in her life, it just helped me realize how important that was, but also that my family and my sister aren't alone in that journey. So these are a lot of conversations that I wanted to have, or I was going to have anyways. So why not record them and edit them into a podcast and share them with the world so that everybody can benefit from those. So that's really where the idea of the podcast came from. I also coach individuals and families with disabilities. I'm a certified coach, so I do that as well. And so coaching and creating content to help people live the lives that they want to live.
Hi, Kristen.
You say hi.
Hi, Daddy.
You gotta speak up.
Hi, Daddy.
Is that a Batman on your shirt, Christian?
I think it's an abominable snowman.
Still very cool.
Hi, Daddy.
Very cool.
So moving on, what I want to talk about is, what I want to talk about next is the perceptions of people with disabilities in society, because I think that is a really big issue. Like, a lot of people are shy to talk about disabled people, or talk to them out in public. So if uh, if you want to share some stories about Christian or um how they react to him in public, or uh, Sarah, or you, Eric, or anything, we'll, we'll, we'll spend a few minutes talking about that. So who wants to start?
Nicole, did you want an opportunity to speak here? I feel like we've been hogging the mic, so.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very informative and interesting. But yeah, all right, Danny, you're awesome. Eric, thank you. I'm gonna piggyback off what you said. You and Lacey both for being vulnerable. I feel like thank you. Long story short, I have a disability. I have a spinal and brain injury.
Yeah.
I travel to New Orleans frequently from Jackson, Mississippi. Last week, actually, this happened last week. I don't come face to face with my disability very often, but when I do, it's such a slap in the face. I got on the streetcar in New Orleans, and it specifically says the fare to get on the streetcar is $1.25. It specifically says on the car 40 cents for anybody that is over the age of 65 with a disability and with a Medicaid or Medicare card. I got on the streetcar and I told the woman, I'd like to show you my card so I can get the 40-cent rate. When I showed it to her, number one, she did not believe me. It was very obvious. I've got funny hands. It was very obvious. I was struggling to get on the car because people were making remarks behind me. She was annoyed that I was taking so slow. It took me forever to get my money out, and then when I did get it out and showed her the card, she looked at me and rolled her eyes and said, "That ain't the right card." And I said, "It's my Medicare card. This is the one they gave me. This is the new one that I have." "Well, that ain't the new one that they had displayed and they showed us, and that ain't the right card." "Okay, ma'am. Well, do I just need to wait for the next one?" "I guess you should, and good luck." So fast forward to Friday, I got back on the streetcar again, and I had a different card, miraculously, and I got on the streetcar, and she said, "Oh, guess you decided to get that new card, didn't you, girl?" It was just so rude. And then there was another woman on the car as well in a wheelchair, and I couldn't believe that there are some people on there that were getting so annoyed that we had to stop at a specific stop for more than a minute because the conductor had to let her down from the lift, which took a second. And it's mind-blowing that, like you said, Eric, people are afraid of something that's different. And I don't look at myself as somebody that has a disability. I'm sure you don't look at your son as someone that has a disability, or your sister that she has a disability. Like, this is something that happened. Does it suck? Absolutely. But what can you do? I mean, it happened. I don't understand why individuals just get so scared and so rude and defensive about somebody with a disability.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see, you agree. See, I think that sometimes they think that we're just given them privilege, which is, if that was the case, I'd be a gazillionaire by now.
Yeah.
That isn't it. Oh, Danny, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I think I'm answering your question, but I'm faced with it, and it happens, and people stare, and people gawk, and they ask questions, but for me, I don't want to live in that world of negativity, because what's done is done, and I'm never going to be able to get the past back. That's fine. The life that I once had is gone.
What?
Okay, let's move forward. So what I do is, instead of being mad and aggravated, I prefer to kill them with kindness, which makes them feel bad. I feel good. Like, I was in a department store today with my mother, and this woman was clearly staring at me in the way that I walked, and I had a leg brace on. But instead of, I was in an accident. I went up to her and I said, "Ma'am, I know what you're thinking. You're totally jealous of this awesome leg brace. I know, I know. You know what? If you had a bad accident off a building, you too can get this." She felt horrible. I felt fantastic, and no crosswords were said. Okay, next. Yeah, next person. That's my business.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, kill him with kindness.
Yeah, I think so. The question that's coming to mind for me is how do you remove the fear, right? So, how do you remove the fear of other people around the difference that might exist? I don't know if anybody has any thoughts around that question. I think what we're doing right now, right? So, like sharing the story of your son, sharing your story, Nicole, right? Like you're helping people to understand, your life and the circumstances that you have, and I think giving people understanding helps to start to dissipate that fear.
I think going back to what we were just talking about, if kids are going to school with other kids who happen to have a disability and they have grown up seeing this their whole life, when they become an adult and see somebody with a disability, it's not going to be a shock or, it's going to be, oh, okay, it's not new. It's not different because what they've always known. And I feel like inclusion in not just school, but in just everyday activities, it's just life. I feel so excluded sometimes from things that, like, my friends who have kids my age who don't have disabilities, we don't get to do the same kinds of things that they do, not because we're not invited or whatever, just because there's not accessibility or it's not something that Christian could participate in, or like little painting parties that the kids love. My blind child hates to paint. I mean, you just it's just one of those things where I feel like, just me personally, I have had people who they start out staring at Christian, or I'll get like social media messages about him, and people are like so standoffish, and they're not sure what to think, and then they meet him, or I talk about him, and I say things like, well, he's 6 and he takes karate, and he loves Adele and Sesame Street, and then they're like, oh, so he's kind of like my 6-year-old. Yes, he's exactly like your 6-year-old. You just can't see, And then the connections are made, and then people, they get it when it's personal, when it's a person and not, and I get it. Like, when people look at Christian, they're going to see his disability first. I get it. And I don't fault them for that. I just wish people would get past it quicker than they do. And maybe some people, but I just, inclusion, I think, gets rid of that fear, getting to be around people with disabilities so that they become people and not just their disability.
Mm-hmm. What was that girl? She was on American Idol. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's so long ago. America's Got Talent. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was some disease that she had where her hands were deformed, but she had this amazing voice. And when she went and performed, it's like the disability disappeared because all you could hear was her voice. And it's crazy because the girl's just like everybody else. She just has this one little thing that was different about her. And it's funny because the panel of judges, every single one of them mentioned something about her disability, with the exception of one that just focused on her voice. And I guess I agree with you, what you're saying. If it's shown in the light that this is something not to be feared, but to be glorified as just another human being, I think that could maybe start to open more doors for us in this community.
Yeah,
And I feel like the dialogue that we're doing, I mean, I feel like the narrative on disability has always been very negative. And one thing that I've done personally, like with my book and with my social media outlets, is like I'm speaking up and changing the narrative, because if you're only getting one side of the story, you're not getting a full picture. And I cannot tell you how many times in the last 6 years that I've heard, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I, I'm not rude to people about it, but in my head, I just want to go like, for what? I'm not sorry. I'm glad that Christian is my child, and yeah, he has some struggles, but I'm not like, I still want him to be my child. I still love him, and I just wish that people would realize that there's nothing to be sorry for, and so that's changing the narrative, giving our side of the story, is hugely important as well. And I really think with social media, I think we're seeing a shift. I really do. In the way that people are viewing disability, and I think it has to do with like people are speaking out, people are sharing. I've literally had a few people tell me that I should have institutionalized him and hid him away, like never to be brought into the light of day, because people had to look at him, and I'm like, and I told him, like, this is not the 1800s. We don't do stuff
Good
like
for
that
you.
anymore. Yeah, I mean, so, putting Christian out there and for people to see, I'm making this statement, like, every mother posts pictures of their child on social media. I'm gonna do the same, and I've had people who don't like it, and I'm like, you just have to get over it, because I'm not gonna stop. I'm proud of my child, and here's a cute karate picture,
Yeah.
So
Wait, he does karate?
he is an orange stripe belt. He's a higher belt than I am.
That's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's been in it for a year.
Well, sir,
If
what's your
you
next question?
if you go if you go on my YouTube channel, you can see the full interview that I did with Lacey earlier this season. And Lacey, it has had over 100 views on YouTube. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. Um, I really appreciate your insight on different issues, and yeah, you're just an awesome mother and a wonderful um you don't let your you don't let your son um worry about his disability. So thank you for that.
Oh, no. No, I mean, I just try not to do any different for him than I would do for Chandler. I mean, I don't think it would be fair any other way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Plus, you're a pretty cool mom. They must be having a blast behind you because they keep hearing them. So
They're such boys. They're such boys.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. Sorry, Danny.
don't apologize. Oh.
Yeah. So I want to thank you all for joining me tonight, and I'm gonna end the recording now, and then we'll talk a bit more.
Sounds
Great.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.
Holla.
Um, just a minute.
Sure.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
I can see you're thinking.